Hello and welcome to the talk series on guiding lights. It's my privilege today to welcome Mr. Nihar Ghosh, and he's currently the founder and director of NRG Advisors and Associates to be the guiding light today. Welcome, Nihar.
Thank you, Payal. It's my pleasure to be on this platform.
Thank you so much. It is entirely our privilege. You've held portfolios across industries ranging from FMCG, food processing, also petrochemicals, manufacturing, retail, education, healthcare. So, in your opinion, how different are people challenges across sectors and industries when you look at it from the HR lens?
I don't think there is a major change when you change industry. The core issue still remains the same. I mean, whether it is an IT company or a manufacturing company, every employee is asking, that is my job something that matters to the overall outcome of the organization or not? Do I have a role, something which is challenging my professional capabilities every single day and is pushing me to learn something new? Okay, do I have a manager who's supportive, who coaches me, guides me, gives me the kind of mentoring that I require to be successful on my job? Do I have a set of colleagues who step out of their own boundaries and silos to extend a helping hand when I need support? Right? Do I have an environment that's not toxic, where I feel at ease and I feel encouraged to speak my mind? Do I have a set of systems and processes where I can express myself on matters that govern my life here? Right? Do I enjoy the companionship and fellowship of my co-workers so that at the end of the day, I can also count my colleague as a friend of mine? And finally, is my work being recognized fairly, and am I being rewarded adequately? And at the end of the day, I think the other concern that remains, while it might not be on the same hierarchy in every industry, but eventually, what is it that I'm taking home? Because at the end of the day, the purpose of my being in employment is also to create wealth and build security for me and my family. So is this job and is this company helping me to create that asset and wealth for me so that I can then look forward to live happily ever after?
I'm very curious to know, Nihar, has there been like one or two incidents or experiences that you may have had in your career which were truly challenging for you as a leader? And how did you turn them around? Because that's really the essence, learning from you as a guiding light.
My first role as an HR head, and I was rather fortunate that I became an HR head way before I thought I was ready for it. So I must acknowledge here that possibly my bosses and my leaders had more confidence in my ability than I had myself. I became an HR head in a company like Johnson & Johnson with only 12 years experience. I possibly must have been one of the youngest HR heads in an MNC in the country at that time. And somebody at the age of 34 becoming an HR head was not heard of in those days. So I've never been through the classical route that most HR graduates would go through, that you first go and do your grounding in the factory, understand what happens in the union dynamics, then come into a corporate role. I straightway got into a corporate role when I moved from academics to industry. And on the very third month of my taking over as HR head, our largest factory underwent a strike, which was also a critical factor because that was a finishing plant where 70% of what we produced used to get packaged and delivered to consumer. And it actually went on to be a very long strike for about 4 months. And I had all the theoretical understanding and knowledge because I did about 4 years of work at IIM Ahmedabad as a research associate in industrial relations and HR. So I knew theoretically all that needs to get done. But I had never actually sat across the table and negotiated with the union in the past. So I knew what needs to be done, but I didn't have the skills. So first thing that I did was, I went back to my CEO and I told that, look, I'm in a situation that I've never previewed in the past. I know what needs to be done theoretically. So I am going to be a learner and a student in this process, and I would need to be guided. I would certainly be standing up in the front. I would participate in strategy making, but you guys need to hold my hand in taking me through this journey. And I think this very honest confession that what you don't know, you need to know what you don't know. And I was very clear that I didn't know, and I didn't need to bluff. Okay, and I think that's something that all my peers in the leadership team saw. So we basically formed a core task force with actually head of manufacturing leading it, and I had no qualms of letting him take that lead because I didn't feel loss of space, because I believe that the strike is something that is impacting the company. The best man should lead, and I had no qualms about playing second fiddle. But I did lead with all my education and knowledge on IR in terms of creating a strategy, holding the team together, and sitting through and learning. So, and I remember some of these negotiations would start at 3 p.m. in the afternoon and would go on till about 2 a.m. in the morning. So it was for me learning how to manage IR was baptism by fire. But we eventually succeeded in breaking that strike. In fact, the union went back and expelled the 2 union leaders that they had because the demands were unreasonable. They re-elected a new committee, came back and negotiated and closed. So it was a success at the end of the day. And importantly, we didn't lose a day's production. We had created plans, which was a huge pressure on the union because they realized that the company is not getting impacted so far its production losses are concerned, which is what they wanted us to feel the pinch. And fortunately for us, that year we had one of the best years because we had a 42% growth on sales revenues, and it was a bumper year. During my 4-5 years tenure as an HR head there, that was the best business performing year that we had seen.
That's very refreshing to hear. The values out of which you operated, clearly a sense of clarity and also the value set, which made it easy for you to take your space where rightfully, like you said, your expertise was academia and you knew the subject matter, but from a practical perspective, you were also looking at how you could apply it. So something on the lines of self-disclosure, and having a very comfortable and safe environment where you were able to do that, and also being able to self-disclose that this is what I can contribute and this is what I need the hand-holding with. So on that inspirational note, Nihar, thousands of candles can be lit by one. And we have spoken about you as the guiding light today. Who are your guiding lights, and what have they inspired in you?
Thanks for this question. Well, I have never believed in following one individual and cloning myself and modeling myself around that one individual. So I've never idolized one individual. But at the same time, I have been very, very fortunate to have been associated and led by great leaders and teachers and colleagues. So for me, there is a guiding light in anybody and everybody around you. What you need to be doing is being conscious of what is it that you want to learn, and how are you going to contextualize the examples and experiences of others that you see around you into what you do. So I've had many iconic bosses from where I have learned the traits of leadership. So I wouldn't ascribe it to one, but with every one of them there was something very unique that I learned. So you need to create a basket of well-wishers or advisors around you, and you must very, very humbly seek out from them the situation that you are in, and you would be surprised the kind and the quality of inputs that you will receive from each one of them. And I continue to keep company of those fellow professionals, seniors and bosses even today.
So Nihar, now we're going to move on to the HR trends. As we all are aware that the HR landscape is gravely transforming. We are now seeing some new HR trends emerging, like hybrid working or people analytics and automation, flexible development opportunities, focus on employee experience, and especially in the era of the Great Resignation, or I would say Great Reset. So it would be really interesting to know your insights on how HR is playing a pivotal role in businesses more than ever now. So over to you.
The entire ecosystem is transforming itself into a digitally connected world. My only experience and the personal realization is possibly the digital transformation that's happening in our personal life is much faster than what is happening in the organizational space. Today we experience everything on the screen of our handheld device, whether it is ordering food, whether it is ordering clothes, whether it is ordering holiday. You get to see the entire outreach to the world on touch. And I would personally consider the kind of solutions that we have today is way behind. So employees asking me a question saying that why is your interactive chatbot so tacky? Why can't it be like the way I experience it in Amazon? All right. So I think that is one area that we need to be cognizant of. That am I creating an organizational digital experience which is equal to or keeping pace with the digital experience that an employee has in his own personal life? Because world is moving faster than what we are inside the organization. So can I create a digital experience for an employee which is at par with what they're experiencing in their personal life? Similarly, I think what employees expect in terms of their own careers and lives, there's a huge amount of change that's happening, and that's, I think, something that is not driven by the organization but driven by the society. The kind of families now the new age employee comes from, the kind of educational background they have, and the whole perspective of life that they have ahead of them. Now, does the policies and processes inside the organization try to recalibrate itself to match with those aspirations? So the great Indian resignation is something that a lot of people are talking about is was to be anticipated, because every time that, and it's happening because of 2-3 reasons. One is there is a change in the labor market dynamics. For 2 years there was an absolute standstill so far as hiring was concerned, so there was a lot of pent up demand. The moment business got back to business as usual, companies went with the existing companies went into heavy hiring mode. So there was all of a sudden a lot of new opportunities got created. Number one. Number two is that with 40-50 new unicorns being created in the country in the last 2 years, despite the pandemic, these companies are creating an industry which is wanting to feed on talent. And for them, the easy target is, rather than creating that talent, is to, though they may not get exact fit, but they're saying at least it's a half-baked talent which I can then come and bring in and recalibrate. So these companies will obviously pull talent out, and I've been part of Sunrise Industries in the past, and I've seen this trend happen because they're desperate for because they're growing faster than that they had imagined, and they're always multiple steps behind where they should be so far as talent requirement is concerned. So for them, in that desperation, they're also willing to offer disproportionate amount of compensation for the roles that they're hiring. So that would be a great attraction. The second is, I think, this entire concept of fear of missing out, FOMO. The employee feels, wow, there is so much of things happening in, White Hat Junior, or there's so much of things that's happening in Byju's. What am I doing sitting in a brick and mortar company like Hindustan Lever or in Imami? All my friends who are in Bangalore working for this company talk about such great things. I'm possibly missing out. So let me jump into the... So all these factors have kind of added on to the great Indian resignation, and that was something that one had to anticipate, because with the kind of change of I would call it the old term labor market dynamics, or job market dynamics. This is going to happen, and this is not the last time that it's happening. It will obviously happen more frequently now. With every disruption that comes in the job market, you would have new skills getting created, new job opportunities getting created. The third part is, I think employees have also become extremely adventurous. Apart from the fact that they want to experience new things, they're saying, so what? I mean, if it doesn't work, I'll turn around and come back. I still have a credible 5 years, 7 years experience in FMCG or pharma or some other industry that I worked in. I can always get back to my core. But let me go out and try it out and see for myself whether I fit into that new age experience or not. So I think these facts that evolve, the dynamics that kind of changes, one has to be very cognizant, and for which I think I always tell, because most of us HR folks are very tactical. We're not strategic in our outlook. Number one, in terms of what is really happening in the business ecosystem, what is happening in the geopolitical context, and socio-economic changes that are happening, and we don't try and correlate the two, and those have very significant impact. And if you are able to correlate and see the trends, then I think we would be better prepared to talent, hold on to talent, find purpose and meaning in talent. For example, how often have the brick and mortar companies gone back, reevaluated? Does the jobs that we have, do they need to be fundamentally relooked? Or can this job be done very differently? I always tell these marketing folks saying that, you guys are coming and telling me that now this whole digital stuff that's happening, kindly organize some amount of digital marketing courses. I said that's only plugging a small little gap, which is around understanding of how this whole digital transformation that's happening. But why can't you think of moving into an era where you are prepared as an organization to compete in the digital world? You can't be seeking comfort because today 80% of your revenues comes out of say general trade or modern trade, and you're saying that e-commerce is only a small minuscule percentage, so let me wait and see. Because if you wait and see, these changes are so rapid, they will come and overwhelm you. As a consequence, I think it is important that HR folks need to keep their eyes and ears open and understanding the macro dynamics, which is not only business but also what is happening in economy, what are the impacts of government policies, what kind of global dynamics that's happening which is likely to impact Indian industry and Indian business ecosystem. As a consequence, what is the correlation that's going to happen to the employees' expectations and the job market dynamics.
That's something that's a great takeaway. And I think something during this conversation, Nihar, that came up in a very organic way, I think, was about the employee life cycle, the expectations and the aspirations. Because clearly, of course, it's a very overused term, if I may, the millennials particularly, and their aspirations. I think a great deal has to be goes back to what their upbringing has been like in terms of access to resources, and that kind of lends to their ability of taking that risk of trying out jobs, not being happy and looking for something else, coming back. So there is a lot of shift if we were to see across generations, because if I was to look 2 generations back, it was more about roti kapda makan and sustaining your family, to something like another generation coming where they clearly can live their aspirations because they have resources. So on that note, I would also like to understand from you, how is HR playing a critical role in engaging and enhancing the employee career life cycle, and especially with respect to, let's say, rewards and recognitions and the benefits. You did touch upon it, but if there are any specific best practices that you may want to call out in today's context, that can really relate to different demographics, age demographics particularly.
So I think one very important area that we need to recognize is that the current generation is looking at economic independence much faster than what the previous generations did. So how is my reward mechanism designed to fulfill that? Otherwise, they will move to such companies who have reward mechanism which is going to be making them economically independent in a much shorter period of time than the previous generation faced. Okay, and guys are possibly thinking that by 40 I need to have made my money. I need to then decide whether I want to work at all, or go and write poetry, or go and open up an organic farm, or go and live in Himalayas. Now, if I have a professional available to me only for 20 years, then I need to participate in fulfilling that ambitions that this individual has in those 20 years and not 40 years that I've done in the past. So what kind of reward mechanisms do I have which gives them a sense that, apart from rewarding you fairly, transparently and adequately, I'm also creating sufficient amount of wealth generation opportunities for you, which is going to synchronize with what your life goals are. So one important aspect that we need to currently focus is recalibrate reward and recognition and benefit programs which resonates with the life goals of employees that they have, because we have not revisited that framework for a very long time, and it's time that we need to. Otherwise, what's going to happen, for example, if you look at in the last 3, 4, 5 years, every single external hire that you make, your whatever is your internal compensation benchmark, the external hire always comes at a 25-30% higher than the internal benchmark. Then your internal guy who's been an extremely successful and loyal employee because he's gone through your internal reward mechanism, which is at a Hindu rate of growth, and he says that, do I get, now I have a peer who's been hired laterally, comes in at a compensation because company was desperate to fill the position, there was a market price that company had to pay, so this individual has come in at a compensation which is 30% higher than me. So he's saying that then you have not been fair to me. So he then says that, okay, then let me get to the market to get that salary at which the new hire has come, and your loyal, committed employee becomes a rebel because he believes that injustice has been done to him or her, and they pick up a job and leave outside. So, and I call that trend as a ransom trend, that I would not pay voluntarily until market holds me to a ransom, because if I don't pay that money, I would not be able to hire. So market is holding me to ransom to pay that price. Eventually what is happening, I'm ending up using up same amount of wage bill that I could have voluntarily undertaken, with creating lucrative reward system which is very finely tuned with the market. But I end up being spending the same amount of money where my arm is twisted and I'm forced to do that rather than choosing to do that. The other part is that we need to be cognizant of is that there has been a significant upgrade in the quality and the kind of lifestyle that people want to lead. I have seen my juniors ending up buying cars which are bigger than mine and more expensive than mine, and which is why I think about 15 years back, I realized that this archaic car scheme that companies had, and people used to boast, wow, and I used to say that, look, you don't have to introduce yourself as who you are. By looking at your car, people can tell what designation that you're in. And I said, how can company decide what I drive? So I have been known in the industry as somebody who goes and decimates the car schemes that companies have had. I'll say, forget it. Just pay that money to that guy. Let that guy choose what he wants to drive. How can I define what should be your lifestyle? A couple of companies that I worked for, they were known as mediocre paymasters. Okay, but when I looked at the wage bill was 2% or 3% higher than a company which was known as a top paymaster. So I said, there is something which is fundamentally wrong, that in terms of real rupee, I'm actually spending a lot more than the other company, but I'm known as a mediocre paymaster, and the other company is known as a high paymaster. So there is a disconnect somewhere. I need to recalibrate the way I distribute that money and the way then it goes back to your org design. Then we realized that I have far too many people who might paid mediocre salary. Then it fundamentally goes back to why do I have so many jobs? That's because I continue to follow archaic processes with very little technology introduction. So I need to bring in absolutely clutter-free processes which reduces unnecessary work. I bring in technology which gives me speed and accuracy. So I don't need a huge army of people to deliver the same outcome that a competition does at half the cost. As a consequence, I now have adequate amount of money to have fewer roles where people have meaningful job, which is in sync with the overall market or functional trends that's happening, with the right amount of technology embedded, so that your employee is always at the cutting edge of the profession and is also getting rewarded adequately. So that would be my response to this.
Really, you're so passionate about it. Thank you so much, Nihar, because I see that's a hard-hitting kind of a perspective and insight. And more than ever in today's time, we are looking at 5 generations being at work together. So certainly, the companies have to relook at the way that they are looking at compensating, sharing the benefits, and also designing rewards and recognitions, like you rightly said. And I like the perspective. If I was to cull out, it would really be in terms of for the companies to be not penny wise and pound foolish, really, and really looking at the second aspect of highly personalizing the employee's experience cycle. And automatically, I think if there is a concept like loyalty or alignment to the organization. So thank you so much. And I'm going to move to the next question, and that's like a tip on really what is that one big HR trend that you closely follow and you'd like to share with the audience?
Well, I think one current conversation that I'm closely following is around the way the organization work, because while the pandemic was something that was forced on us, but it revealed a lot of things. Okay, the way our work is designed, the fact is that everybody doesn't need to be in office on an everyday basis for work to get done, and we realized that by allowing people to work remotely, we actually ended up achieving more than what we have done when people were physically there. Now that has far-reaching ramifications, because I don't need that large an office, that large an infrastructure. So I think one fact is that can we be more flexible and be more anticipating of changes that are coming? And that is one area that I would like to continue to watch. Don't wait like what happened during pandemic. It came and hit us all hard on the face, and we didn't know what to do, because we'd never imagined a reality like this will ever come. And then everybody struggled for next 2-3 months, and then we could find. But the fact is that all of us successfully made that transition. So one character that came out very, very clearly across most organizations is that we have the resilience to survive. So there is no question mark in our ability to transition. How do you really anticipate? How are you supporting your employee who is working remotely? That's a skill that I need to enable my line managers with, and my employee with, that how can I feel adequate and appropriately skilled to be managed to meet all my deliverables and deadlines, being working on a remote basis. How do I manage that entire sense of isolation where I'm not meeting my team members, that bonhomie that we used to have, that we go to office, post office parties, friends, वो कुछ नहीं हो रहा है. So entire engaging an employee, and how do you build that emotional connect with the employee?
The way the entire world went about embracing that change. And your message clearly is, rather than waiting for change, let's start anticipating and also proactively working towards managing that change. And one of the key things that you called out was workplace practices. It's been a very, if I may say, heart to heart conversation with some real values and lessons to take away for the young aspirants and also people in the HR fraternity. So, thank you once again.
Thank you so much. I feel privileged to have been on this platform. And I also feel very privileged and blessed to have had the life and career that I was given. So thank you everybody, and just wish me good health so that I continue. Thank you.
Thank you.